I'm thrilled to introduce Leslie Wier, a distinguished coach with an impressive background in coaching psychology and education. Leslie has been a Noom coach for 6 years, which in Noom years is like 100 years, and currently works as a coach serving members through Noom's business partnerships. She holds a master's degree in coaching psychology and education and is a national board certified health and wellness coach, as well as a professional certified coach with the International Coaching Federation. Leslie has also taught for Noom's national board approved health coach education program, that is a sentence, where she supports the professional development of other coaches. When she's not coaching or teaching, Leslie enjoys learning new things, spending time in nature, indulging in creativity and design, and reading psychology books and fantasy novels. Today, Leslie will share insights on what coaching is not, how it differs from therapy, consulting and mentoring, and athletic coaching, and how to know if coaching is right for you. Leslie, welcome to the podcast. It's great to have you here.
Good morning. Thank you.
Your background is incredibly extensive, and it really does, just from my experience, obviously, if you've been here 6 years, I've been here 7 years as well. We've had a lot of overlap, and a lot of your background totally makes sense now, and without trying to make your head too big. When I do think of coaching, I think of you as almost like a thought leader in that space as well, especially when it comes to the general art of coaching and kind of the creativity around it. I'm just always fascinated by the lens you look at coaching through, and I think it's something incredibly valuable, not just for Noom, but also people who use Noom and just in general.
You definitely have given me a big head. Thank you for that this morning.
So early on, we're only about 2 minutes in. Great start.
Great start to my day.
I would love to just spend a bit of time discussing your background as well. And I'd love for it to be almost kind of like a journey on how you found kind of your purpose with coaching, and then eventually how it led you to Noom.
Yeah. So my career began in international education. When I was in college and straight out of college, I was working in an international student office at 2 different universities, and I loved it. My bachelor's degree was in international studies, and just being able to kind of learn about and be immersed in diverse environments was really important to me. I grew up in a multicultural, multiracial household, despite being very white, so that sense of diversity is really important to me. And I just loved working. I got to work with students from at least 60 different countries from all over the world. And it was incredible being able to support them in their education and career goals, because this coming to get an education here is not an easy thing to do, right? Especially when you're coming from outside of the country. So I started there. And then in the back of my head while I was doing that was a lifelong dream of mine that I had since I was a kid, probably elementary school. And that was to spend at least 1 year of my life living in Japan. And I ended up there for 4 years, actually. So I applied to and was accepted to the JET program, which is the largest sort of teaching exchange program in Japan, sponsored by the government. And so and prior to that, I had been working on my master's degree in TESOL at the university that I was working with. And so I kind of just transitioned a little bit over into actually teaching, as opposed to supporting students on the administrative side of things. And I lived in Japan for 4 years. And while I was there, I discovered coaching. And this was still when the idea of life coaching was like, life coaching, what is that? Is that a real thing, And I came across it and realized that I needed coaching. And when I started learning more about it, I was like, this is a job that I can have. It was everything that I loved about teaching without all of the stuff that I didn't like, all of the complications, the bureaucracy, the having to teach things that the students didn't want to learn, right, or that were not relevant or important to them, And so I discovered coaching, and I was like, this is everything that I love, because it's all about building potential. And that was the common thread that I had seen as an international student advisor, as an educator, and then as a coach, was that I loved helping people to achieve their potential on their terms, based on their own internal motivations and the things that light them up. And one thing that I have realized about myself, I have this strength of being able to just see what's amazing about other people. It's just kind of very natural in me. And that jives so well with coaching, right? That's something that's a skill in coaching in and of itself. And so that's kind of the thread of my career is that I love helping people to fulfill their potential. And that sounds really cliche, I think, in some ways, but it's what I love. Yeah.
Yeah, I can understand it does sound cliche, but it's kind of similar to what I said in the opening parts of the podcast here. Is like I said, I believe that everyone has an interesting story to tell. And it sounds like you're a similar optimist in that sense. Like you believe that people all have like a special, I don't know if you want to call it a skill, or they all have something in their life that you can kind of tease out of them to just enhance their life and make it better.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I'm the type of person for good or bad, I fall in love with potential, right? It's just something that I see in everything and everyone. And so it's awesome to be able to engage with that on a daily basis, you know?
That makes sense. When I said you were a thought leader in coaching, I'm just thinking of the questions you might ask in either small meetings or big meetings. And a lot of it actually is based around potentials. You know, here we are now, but like we could do this, or have you thought of this, or this is going on externally. I can see how that's all kind of playing into your mindset. Was the life coaching part, was that in Japan you discovered that, or was that post Japan?
So that was when I was in Japan. This is when I want to say 2016. I discovered this idea of life coaching. I actually went through a coach education program while I was there and realized that coaching psychology was a thing. And so I started my master's degree. It was a distance program while I was there through the University of Missouri, and then finished it when I repatriated I repatriated in 2017, and I finished the degree in 2018.
Yeah, you were almost ahead of the curve a bit. I think like even definitely from COVID times, like the importance of kind of coaching and just general health and mindfulness, like it has skyrocketed. But I think even before that, it wasn't as well known. And I had a similar sensation. Like I also have a teaching background, and I thought it was fascinating what you said about sometimes teaching students things that were non-applicable, or that's an interesting concept, right? Because you as teachers out there, you might agree, you might not, but you could definitely make cases. There's a lot of like learned material that's maybe unnecessary or not applicable to real life, and maybe some sort of like social skills are lacking and should be taught or be more like important. Conversation for another day, maybe another podcast. But I kind of like how you had that realization that you had the foundation with teaching. You knew there was something within you that you really liked, kind of pulling positive or potential aspects out of people. You originally did that through teaching, and then you realize, oh my God, there's this whole other landscape out there, like life coaching. And I had a similar kind of epiphany, I think, when I applied for Noom. Thought it was a fake job at first, to be honest.
Same. I totally thought it was like, is this real?
It doesn't. Yeah, this can't be real. It's some sort of scheme. And next thing you like get into the environment, you're like, oh my God, this is real. This is like, it's a cool place. So yeah, you had that realization as well, almost, and it just, yeah, your kind of enthusiasm took over. You ended up doing your master's degree.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and then go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, yeah, like, what happened from that point on?
Yeah, so I got back in 2017. I was the sub for about 6 months. I was looking for a coaching job, and at the time, coaching, even like as a job, didn't really exist. It was one of those things that like you had your own business, you were taking your own clients, and so on a corporate business level, it wasn't very common. But I was like, I'm going to look anyway, see what's out there, and I found Noom. They were hiring for health coaches, and at the time, I didn't really know. I think 2017 is when the MBHWC actually, I think, had its first cohort. I can't remember exactly, but there was not a lot out there about health coaching. It's a very young field, and even more so then. And so I was like, hey, this is a coaching job. I'm going to apply. And I got it. Just like you, I was like, is this a real job? And then kind of through all of that, my work with Noom, I, of course, became more kind of enmeshed in the health coaching field. I got my board certification, and the rest is history, you know? So I am a health and wellness coach.
I never knew that the NBHWC, for those unaware, that is, as we said earlier, like the National Board Certified Health and Wellness Coach. I never knew it was so new. I mean, it makes sense. I think it is important to have like professional bodies. You know, it reminds me of the landscape similar to like being a nutritional scientist. Like you could do, or a nutritionist, you could do a weekend course and say, hey, I'm a nutritionist. You could do a master's in nutritional science and come out and say,
right,
hey, I'm a nutritionist. And I think in the moment it is kind of similar with coaching. There's a lot of different kind of courses out there. Not saying they're like ones are better than the other, but I do like that the MBHWC is really kind of, it almost seems like the gold standard. I'm sure there's a few others kind of and more specialized in different areas out there too.
Yeah, and so there's the MBHWC, which is specific to health and wellness coaching, and then that's kind of primarily in the US. It's starting to expand outwards a bit, and then of course the ICF, which is the gold standard internationally, which has been around a lot longer than that. And the MBHWC was born kind of from the ICF and from ICF coaches and members who realized that there was a need for very specific standards and ethics and competencies for a health coach that kind of differentiated them from something like a business coach or something like that.
Yeah, it's incredibly important. And I was wondering that for ages too. I was like, can I take these exams in Europe? And like information was impossible to find. But there's actually I just chatting with someone as well that they're just took their exam actually in, I think it was in Madrid in Spain.
Awesome.
Yeah, so it's expanding out, which is good news.
Awesome.
All right, so that led you to Noom. Let's talk a small bit more in depth about kind of the work that you're doing with Noom. You mentioned that you're kind of working with the business partnership side of the house at Noom. I'm just wondering if you want to maybe dive a small bit into that.
Yeah, I feel like I've worn so many hats at Noom, which is often the case when you're working in a startup environment, right? I've been a coach, I've been a coach manager. I also taught for our board certified program. Right now, I work with kind of enterprise side of things. And what that means is that we have partnerships with employers and health plans who offer Noom to their employees or their constituents. And I coach them and they get it as a benefit. They don't have to pay for it because it's paid for them. And I love it. I love getting to talk to people every day about their goals and help them to achieve their health goals and just help them figure out how to live a healthier lifestyle in a way that kind of meets their own needs and suits their own life. The coaching that I do is text-based, and it's interesting because coaching nowadays can exist by text, it can exist face-to-face, by phone. There are so many modalities that are all valid. The skills for the most part are the same, but need to be adapted by the coach to that modality. And I like, it's a challenge talking to someone without that face-to-face sometimes, but I feel like the relationships that we develop are still very strong.
Yeah, and it definitely is challenging for people, right? Even if you're texting someone and you don't have that like visual cues or you're not face-to-face, like a lot of things could be misinterpreted, picked up wrong. And it's definitely a skill for a coach also to be able to kind of articulate. So with coaching, you're probably trying to like create frameworks for people or help them like process through change or help them build a habit, and to be able to like articulate that and put that into a message is a challenge as well.
Yeah. And honestly, I really feel that challenge has made me a better coach because it's just made me so much more adaptable and so much more curious. And it means that I can meet people again where they're at. So if I'm coaching outside of Noom, for instance, I can offer text-based coaching for the people who need it most or who prefer that, because there are a lot of people who don't want to do face-to-face. Or I can offer face-to-face or a combination of both. And the reality is I've taught coaches moving from one modality to the other. And it's a transition for the coach that actually takes a lot of practice. So not every coach can offer that just immediately. It takes work, I feel good that that's a thing that I can offer to kind of meet each person where they're at.
Yeah, it's a skill that has to be learned as well. When you say it helps you adapt, like the first things come to my mind is I have to be really precise with my questioning to be able to like elicit information. But is that one part of it, or is there anything else?
That's definitely one part of it. I think the other big part of it is just kind of meeting the needs of individuals. It's also adapting within the conversation itself in terms of the approach, right? Something that a modality that we use or a strategy that we use in health coaching is motivational interviewing. And motivational interviewing doesn't always translate well to text-based coaching, right? And so I have to figure out how I can use MI in a way that is supportive, but also maybe adjust my approach to something that's entirely different, because sometimes people do not like it.
Yeah, sometimes, like you said, I think that is where the meeting people where they're at, and then just the kind of unconditional positive regard for people as well. As I could see myself as a coach getting frustrated in that moment, but you have to realize it's not about you, it's about the person that you're working with.
Yeah, absolutely.
Awesome. Before we do move on about what coaching is not, like what do you love about the work that you do currently?
I love helping people see how amazing they are.
Similar to your like pulling out the good traits out of them, you said, and the potential.
And I don't it's not about me telling the person that they're amazing. Like sometimes I do that, but it's really about me eliciting the information that shows them that they're amazing because of what they've done or because of who they are. I'm a reflection essentially essentially. I hold up the mirror to what is actually there. And that is really one of the most fulfilling parts of my job, is helping people to see that reflection of what is truly there. Because we can get so caught up in limiting beliefs and thought distortions and things like that it's hard to be objective about what we see in ourselves. And I love being able to bring a different perspective to people's perceptions of themselves.
When you experience, or people you're working with experience like that eureka moment, or almost like a breakthrough moment, I say that's incredibly satisfying for you as well as for them.
I think so. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, that's sweet. Okay, let's move on to a bit about what coaching is not, and feel free to guide this conversation. I may be thinking that we could talk or maybe differentiate coaching from other modalities like therapy, consulting, mentoring, and athletic coaching.
Yeah. So the reason I wanted to have this conversation, you had asked me, when you asked me to do this with you, the reason I wanted to have this conversation is because it's a conversation I have a lot with new clients and new members and things like that, because a lot of people still have not experienced coaching. And when you're establishing a coaching relationship with someone who has never experienced coaching before, they have no idea what to expect, right? Coaching is kind of an entirely different way of being in the world than we are used to. And so it's really important to set expectations and be able to explain what it is that we're doing, right? And so one of the easiest ways I have found to frame this is by first talking about what coaching is not, in comparison to the things that already kind of exist as sort of a baseline understanding that people may already have, right? And I start with therapy. How is coaching different from therapy? If you think about a visual of a number line, and you've got a 0 in the middle, and on one side you've got the negative numbers, and on the other side you've got the positive numbers. 0, baseline, is baseline human functioning for that individual, for any individual. And then the negative numbers are essentially sort of languishing. This might be the space where mental health disease and challenges occur, where healing pathology occurs, things like that, right? Treating things like depression, et cetera, or treating disease. And then the positive numbers are flourishing. Essentially, you're starting to exceed that baseline. You're not just existing, you are doing all of the things that you want to be doing and achieving. Exactly. And so therapy can actually exist along that entire line, from the negatives to the positives. Some therapists may operate only in the negative areas as just sort of their primary area of focus, some in the positive, some across the spectrum. I can only operate in the positive numbers, right? And so therapy has much larger breadth of sort of field of operation, whereas, I cannot do any of the healing, of the management of pathology, of disease, nothing like that, right? And so coaching, from, if you take the sort of the flourishing space, the positive numbers, coaching is sort of designed to get you from that baseline 0 up into the infinite positive numbers through sort of action-oriented, goal-driven behavior change-driven plans, et cetera, right? Does that all make sense so far?
It does make sense. I do have a few follow-up questions. My first is just to clarify, like, this is an expectation you actually set out when you go to work with an individual. You might use that explanation kind of the line.
Yep, exactly.
Excellent. I think it's a really good concept, and like, it kind of gives me an understanding already of the work that you're doing. What do you do if a person either openly admits, or through like your experience, you feel like a person is in those negative number zone? Like, what can you do from it?
Yeah. So, and that actually adds, so if you think about that number line initially on the x-axis, right? Yeah. Let's add another line on the y-axis. Again, negative numbers and positive numbers.
I love maths. Let's go. Let's do it.
So that means then that coaching can actually exist. The positive numbers can actually exist in the negative number space, right? So if someone, for instance, is experiencing mental health challenges, I can absolutely work with them. There are certain things that I cannot do, right? I cannot help them to heal or manage those mental health challenges. But if they're working with a therapist and their therapist gives the okay for coaching, we can absolutely work on sort of goal-oriented, behavior-driven like actions, right? It could be, health related. It could be maybe their therapist recommends certain things, and I help them figure out how to implement those certain things into their lifestyle. It could be a number of things, right? So if I experience someone who I think, I have training to be able to kind of determine whether or not something is within my scope and without my scope. If I think someone is kind of in that space where I might need to refer out, then I'll have that conversation with them. Absolutely. It's a very kind of upfront discussion. And I think it's important to note here, coaching is a relationship. And so I'm having a conversation with someone that I hope to be in a relationship with to some degree, right? And so I'm having just a very open, kind, empathetic conversation about what I'm noticing and what I can and cannot do. And so that could be coaching could exist with therapy. It could be I refer them to other resources if they're not interested in therapy, things like that.
Yeah, I think it's important to understand it's not a catch-all, because I can imagine people either signing up for Noom or like going to work with, we'll say, a coach in general. If you use the term loosely or use the term health coach, I could see there's different expectations for different people. And I'm sure you experience that at Noom with people who are wanting to work with you. Everyone kind of has a different expectation of perhaps what coaching could be. And then your job is to kind of explain that. And that's what you seem to do, like as a fundamental principle. You explain that right off the bat so they know how they can best work with you and how you can best work with them. It really does seem like a partnership is what's coming to mind. And it's not just a partnership with the person, like the way you said it, like they might be working with a therapist on another aspect, or they might be working with a doctor on a different aspect. It's kind of like a collective team of people supporting this person, and you're part of that.
Right. Exactly. And so if you're working with your doctor, right, I'll get a lot of people that come and say, what supplement should I take for such and such thing? And I'm like, I can't tell you that, right? I cannot diagnose. I cannot prescribe. If you want a supplement for a very specific health related thing, definitely talk to your doctor. Now, if your doctor gives you a specific recommendation for whatever, I can help you figure out how to actually make that change.
So you're helping them process through that moment in their life.
Right.
When people come to you, like that example, right, just kind of reminds me, that's a misconception, right? Hey, what supplements are good? And I guess, like, what are some other misconceptions people might have about coaching in general?
Give me a meal plan.
Oh, yeah. Just give me that and I'll stick to it.
Tell me what to eat, right? Instead of telling you what to eat, because I can't do that, an RD can do that. I will say, let's figure out what works for you, right? I can help you figure out what foods help you to feel good, kind of build awareness of the foods that you're eating and how they impact you and your goals and things like that. I can help you figure out how to make changes with your food, et cetera, et cetera. I can help you figure out how to implement changes that an RD gives you. And I think it's important to note here that, like, it doesn't sound, when I say I can help you to make changes, it doesn't sound like a whole lot. But if you think about it, it's like your doctor tells you exercise more, but you don't exercise more, right? Why don't you exercise more? There's a whole lot of reasons why you don't exercise more, right? So just implementing the recommendation is not intuitive. There's a whole process that comes with making a change from a recommendation. And that's kind of the space that the coach operates in.
There's a whole process that comes from making a recommendation for someone. Can you speak a bit more to that?
Yeah. So if a doctor says you need to do this and this and this and this in order to feel better, right? Like, that's a whole lot of change that the person has to make. And whether or not they actually are going to do that, hit or miss, right? And so that's the space that I operate in, where I help them to figure out how to make that change, essentially, how to go from not doing any of those things to doing all of those things in a way that's sustainable for their health and well-being and the health outcomes that they want.
That's interesting. I'm trying to think of an example, like what's happening there, we'll say, from the doctor example. And I'm definitely not saying all doctors are like this, but that's almost like that's prescriptive, right? It's saying like true, like research and best practices, X is good for you. But the person might be like a mile away from that goal, right? And then I think you're there almost as like the helping hand to help them move towards that step by step. Because if the goal is too far, the odds are you won't make it. You'll become demotivated. You'll probably question your willpower, and you can get into like a really tough space mentally then as well. But you're kind of there to help them process through that, to make like small incremental changes to get to where they need to be. And sometimes it might not always be what the doctor prescribes. It might be something different, because everyone is different, and you have to find what works for you.
Yeah. And that kind of brings us to another point about what coaching is not, right? I think about when we hear coaching, just the word coaching, I think traditionally we tend to think of something like athletic coaching, which
Mhm.
is educational or directive, consultative in nature, where so you've got someone telling you essentially what to do, how to do it in order to be successful. Coaching does not do that. Pure coaching in and of itself by nature is non-directive, which is not something that a lot of people are used to.
Yeah.
They're used to going to a person for expertise, right? They're used to going to a person to say, "Tell me what to do." I
Yeah.
don't tell people what to do. I can offer ideas if you don't have ideas of your own. My job though ultimately is to help you figure out what works and to pull out your own internal resources in order to kind of get the job done in a way that works best for you. And sometimes I might offer insight if that is what is
Yes.
wanted or needed. I think that's certainly within my scope of practice. I usually ask for permission, but ultimately the expectation, this person is going to tell me what to do and how to do it. Absolutely not.
The next question I was going to have for you, right? That sometimes if you go into an institution or if you go online, say you go online, you buy your meal plan, right? I feel as a person purchasing that, I've got bang for my buck. I've got the meal plan, I paid for it and I have it. Now, if I'm coming to a coach and I'm like saying, can I have a meal plan? I want to change my eating habits. Tell me what to do. And the coach keeps coming back with these like questions, trying to elicit information, and I'm getting frustrated and being like, I
Right.
just want the answer. Just tell me. Like, I don't want any riddles. Like, how do you support someone who's in that kind of a mindset? And let's just say you set
Yeah.
like the expectation setting, but they still are kind of like, I need more expertise from you, coach. Like, please don't ask,
Yeah.
please stop asking me questions.
I think it can kind of depend on the person. If I need to refer them out to a resource that can help them develop a meal plan, I will do that,
Mhm.
right? Whatever that resource is. Ultimately, my goal as a coach is to help the person make sustainable change, right? And the reality is when someone is creating a meal plan for you, you're going to do that for a certain amount of time, but how sustainable is that long term after a couple of months,
Yeah,
right?
there's actually studies like when you go on any type of diet, you can keep it going for so long, but over the span of I think about 2 years, like you end up if it's weight loss is your goal, you end up kind of putting back on the weight that you might have subsequently lost at the beginning as well.
Right, exactly. So my goal is sustainable long-term change. And so if they need another resource to help kind of get them jump started with a meal plan, I'll help you with finding that resource. That is not my area of expertise, right? But I can certainly help you in the process of figuring out. And then once you have that resource, once you have that meal plan, we can talk about what's working with this meal plan, what's not working with this meal plan, and longer term, what do you need to sustain the changes that are coming with that meal plan, right? Because the reality is without that sort of guidance or focus, at some point, like you said, they're going to fall off of that meal plan
Mhm.
and they're going to wonder, why am I yo-yoing?
Yeah,
And
a lot.
so I'm certainly willing, I can certainly work with people who need a solid resource to like support their self-efficacy if they're really struggling with coming up with stuff on their own. But it's not my job to provide that, right? I think of coaching as a joint strategizing session. When you're trying to figure it all out in your head by yourself, it's very quickly overwhelming. And then you just kind of give up, which is natural when you're overwhelmed, right? But if you have someone to talk to about it, get reflections on, and help provide some sense of focus,
Yeah.
that's really kind of where the coach operates.
Yeah, as again, it does circle back again to kind of the partnership aspect of what you're speaking to. And we've given a few different examples, and I want to kind of segue slightly into people knowing if coaching is right for them. Like, what are some signs that might indicate that someone might benefit from coaching or
So
might not benefit from coaching, maybe as well?
this is my opinion. It might be considered a biased opinion because I'm a coach. I am of the opinion everyone should have a coach at some point in their lives. I have been in and out of therapy, in and out of coaching my entire life, right? And so I think coaching is for anyone at any point, really. But I think a good indication is if there's a thing that you are working on that you want to achieve that's really important to you, but you're not seeing movement, then coaching could totally be right for you, right? Getting that extra support could be of huge benefit. Coaching in and of itself is goal oriented. So if there's a specific goal that you're working towards that you're struggling with, then I think that insight from a coach is helpful. Some people also, I think something that we talk about a little bit less in terms of the impact of coaching is self-awareness. My goal ultimately as a coach is to build self-awareness in someone to the point that they can actually do the things on their own. And so if you want to learn more about yourself, if you want to build confidence, then coaching could be right for you.
That kind of introspective thinking, something that coaches can really offer value in, because sometimes we go through life, we do things without truly like stopping and taking time to think, is aligning with my values and principles, is this where I want to go in regards to my health, etc. I'm not saying we should all do that. Like, life is incredibly busy, incredibly hard. I do it. I think we all coast at some point in our lives as well, but it seems like you're bringing the person into the present. And obviously you'll use the past to go to the future as well. But you're just you're increasing that, like you said, that self-awareness or that mindfulness aspect.
Yeah. And you're right. Like, sometimes we need to coast just to get through life, right? I mean, our brains are designed to do that. Mm-hmm. So it's entirely, I think, understandable and natural. But if you, for whatever reason, don't want to be doing that, you find that it's not helping you and your life is not going the direction that you want it to, then I think that sense of presence and being more aligned with who you are, who you want to be, and where you want to go is what coaching can help with.
Yeah, 100%. I do want to move on to around the coach operative mindset. But before I do, Leslie, do you mind if I just take a brief pause, just say hello to our listeners who have just joined in and just recap on the platform? Thank you so much for everyone who has joined. I see we've increased massively in listener count since I last did the introduction. So I do just want to remind you that, of course, you were listening to this conversation with Leslie Wier live on Noom Vibe, which is I don't know how long more I can keep saying new, but is the new free wellness community app from Noom. At the Noom Vibe community, we're all on a shared mission to live better, longer lives. And the Noom Vibe app is actually an app that pays you to live better. You can earn rewards from our step tracker, can build out healthy habits like your workouts routine, water intake, meditation. And it also allows you to connect with this wonderful community, share your positive thoughts, and much more. You also get to interact and learn from Noom coaches such as Leslie and other experts on the platform as well. And remember that you can catch these episodes, as I said, live only on Noom Vibe, and you are able to contribute real time and even join in as a guest. If you are listening to this recording on Spotify or YouTube, I encourage you to download the Noom Vibe app to join us live and support us in building out this wonderful community. And there's also some additional features. You can see myself and Leslie's conversation, as I said, on YouTube or Spotify. I do have a Instagram page set up for the podcast. You can click on my profile and there should be a link to my Spotify there, or you can click on, I think it's like 3 dots, and it brings you to other social media sites as well. So feel free to jump on over there, drop me a follow, share, like, subscribe, all the good stuff to help us build out this platform and continue to spread the word around the power of coaching, the power of connection and communication to a wider audience as well. Also, fun fact about Leslie, I don't know if you're part of this, Noom internally are doing a competition when it comes to the step goals using Noom Vibe. And I don't mean to boast, but my team is currently number 1 and we are winning. So I got to get out for a walk straight after this, but it is a really, really good incentive. And I find myself walking a lot. It has helped that I've been doing a lot of flying lately, both for work and for pleasure. And my terminals keep getting moved really far apart. So that's increased my step count mastery. But it's a whole lot of fun. And we'll just keep you up to date on who wins that one. Are you part of that, Leslie?
I am not, mostly just because I am getting my exercise in other ways these days. It's very hot outside. I do not want to walk. So yeah, but I've definitely been hearing things about it.
I don't blame you. I was in New Jersey last week and the heat, I couldn't handle it. And I'm sure it's hotter elsewhere. All right, let's just come back to the coach's operative mindset. And I'd love for you just to kind of explain what this means.
Yeah, the operative mindset. This is the mindset that a coach has whenever they're working. It is an intentional mindset that the coach cultivates within themselves when they are coaching, and often when they're not coaching as well. And it is a way of being. And so I think one of the most important aspects of this operative mindset is unconditional positive regard. And what that means is I am going to be approaching every single person I work with unconditional respect and positive regard. I don't regard, like, that is how I should be approaching any relationship that I have with a client, right?
Mm-hmm.
Regardless of my biases, which of course they exist because I'm a human, regardless of internal or external influences, my goal, my intention with every person that I work with is that sense of ultimate respect and empathy with that person. And I think it's important for the client to know that, because coaching can be a bit of an uncomfortable process. It asks you to understand yourself better. And that is not an easy thing to do sometimes, right? It can be very uncomfortable for people. And so what that means is it's really the coach's, and should be the coach's, intent to create a safe space, a safe container for the client to grow, to feel uncomfortable, and to experience new things and ways of being in the world. And so I want every client to know that coming into the conversation. One, because it sets an expectation, but two, because again, coaching is a relationship. And all of the research that we have shows that coaching outcomes come for the client, come from the quality of the relationship, right? And so that's why it's just so important for a coach to start with that operative mindset, and to start beginning and end with that mindset.
I have a few different thoughts. The first is it sounds like with the unconditional positive regard, you are explicitly saying to the person you're working with, like, hey, we're going to experience discomfort. Like that's what we have to do in order to grow, but I'm going to be kind of with you every step of the way.
Yes, exactly.
The second point is, we can maybe have a discussion around this, is, can you just repeat what you said again about the relationship building? You said like the outcomes depend on how strong the relationship is between
Yeah, that's in coaching
client?
and in therapy. Outcomes for the client are all like, it's all dependent upon the quality of the relationship, the working alliance. That's why I use the term working alliance, right? Because that's where the outcomes come from. And it's not about necessarily the methods the coach uses, though there are some scientifically validated methods.
Yeah.
But those methods that are scientifically validated are ultimately contributing to the quality of the relationship.
Okay, can we dive a bit more into this? Because I'm curious. Like when you said that the outcomes are dependent on it, is there a sense of the client is like, I don't want to leave my coach down, or is there's obviously something more psychological to that, right?
Yeah, that's definitely not the intention, right? We don't want the client to become dependent on us, because that's not sustainable, and it's not about us in that sense. It's about the client feeling supported. It's about the client feeling that they've got this there's a relational aspect, right? Everything I do leans into their autonomy and honoring that, but it's me being able to support them in that process, for them to have some sort of like stable connection that I think is really what's important here, right? For me being able to empathize and validate their experiences. And that's really what helps to build their self-efficacy and their own confidence.
It's kind of like you're part of one of the steps. If we think like Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? You have your psychological needs at the bottom, like they breathe, they have food, they have water, then the safety and security is on top of that. Like, well, you can work with that. They might be trying to improve their health and stuff like that to improve like their family and social abilities. But then you have the love and belonging as like the next stage. And it really sounds like that's where the heart of that's where the coach really lives, and can kind of help them build to that next like area of self-esteem from there as well. So you're kind of like at the core of that concept as well, and you provide them with, friendship's the wrong word, but you provide them with that support that you were saying, that kind of sense of connection as well.
Yeah, exactly. And if you think about when you're successful in your own life regardless of coaching, with the things that you want to achieve, for a lot of people, it's because they have the support and the connection and the validation that and the empathy that they need, right? Not everybody has that. And that's when coaching can be a benefit as well.
That's definitely a big reason for this podcast, around like the connection and community or communication aspect as well. There's something really, really innately important in it as well. And it's cool to see how like you infuse that in your coaching practice as well.
Yeah.
How does the kind of coach operative mindset, and we might have touched on some of this already, but how does it influence kind of, we spoke about like the coaching relationship and outcomes for clients. So it helps, you spoke about kind of like the support aspect, but is there anything else to that we haven't touched on?
I think this idea of partnership is really important, right? So I come into my perspective as the coach is I come into this relationship with some expertise in things like behavior change and coaching psychology and sort of ways to kind of help you build awareness of yourself, et cetera. But you are the expert on your own life. You know your life far better than I do, which is why I don't tell you what to do, right? Because I could tell you, you need to go to the gym this day and this day and this day at this time. And you're gonna be like, Leslie, that does not work for me. And so that's why I don't tell you what to do, right? So my job is to lean into your own expertise about your own life, and kind of we use that together to jointly strategize about what you could try or what might work. I think what's important about that sense of partnership, though, is that like that means that the client has to do some work, right? Ideally more work than the coach. If I'm doing more work than the client, then that's a problem, because then that's not what coaching is. That's me consulting or me educating or me, right? That's me being the expert. And so when you go into a coaching relationship, go in with the expectation that you're going to be doing some work to make changes for your life, right? And not everybody is ready for that, and that's entirely okay.
Yeah, that can be difficult. Yeah, you're putting money into something, and hey, I'm putting money into this, but I still have to do all the work. Like, what's the catch? Yeah,
Right.
Sometimes it's hard to see because there's maybe no like instant gratification. Maybe there is. I mean, the relationship building can be fun and gratifying as well. But I guess in terms of like your health goals, you might see changes at the beginning, but you're always going to experience like those peaks and troughs as you go through it, and that could be tough for the client to navigate too, right?
Yeah. And that kind of brings up another good point about sort of the operative mindset. There are times where we can have a single coaching session and the client will be able to get out what they need and we never see them again. But generally speaking, coaching works really well over a long period of time with sort of like a balance between focusing on the outcome, that long-term goal, and the process of getting there, because it's the process where all the learning and the change happens.
Do you find that part of it incredibly difficult? Because I'm thinking today people just
Yes.
things are transactional, things are fast, like instantly. Like I order Amazon or I order online this morning, I get it before the evening, and now you're coming into this environment where it's like, oh, we got to slow down, we got to think through everything, and that can be difficult.
It is. It is an entirely different way of kind of experiencing life than what we're used to nowadays. It requires a mindset shift on the part of the client, right? And that's what I mean to some degree about putting in the work. You have to be willing to change the way that you perceive yourself in the world. You have to be willing, in this specific example, you have to be willing to say, I realize that my focus on instant gratification isn't getting me what I want. How do I need to look at the world differently? That's really what coaching helps you to do, you know?
Yeah, and it's probably it's more important than ever really in a world that's go to be able to like take that time to pause as well has a lot of benefits.
Yeah.
Why is it crucial? I know a piece you want to speak about just understanding like the need for support. Like why is it crucial for clients to understand their needs for support like in a coaching relationship?
I love this question. So every person is really different. And just like every person learns differently, like I'm coming at this from the perspective of an educator, I need to be able to adapt to everybody's learning styles. As a coach, I also need to be able to adapt to different people's needs for support, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I ask this question a lot. What support do you need from me? What do I need to know about you in order to best support you? Because what best supports one person is not good for another. And I'll give you a very specific example. Coaches sometimes offer ideas, and which is totally within our scope of practice, as long as it's okay with the client. If I am someone who is getting coached, I am receiving coaching, I do not want someone to offer me ideas unless I explicitly ask. I do not like it. I resist it wholeheartedly, 100%, unless it's someone I have a very good relationship with and they know me really well. Some people really, really want me to constantly give ideas and insights because it helps kind of spur the brainstorming in their own head. They're not necessarily going to take those ideas and do them, but it helps to spur on the ideas, right? That's something I need to know about someone. And you may not always know what exact kind of support you need. Some people will tell me, I do not do well with negative reinforcement. I really need a lot of positive reinforcement, which is great because I don't do negative, but I need to know that so that I can ensure that I'm kind of providing a little bit of extra here and there until they get to a point where they're relying on their own self-efficacy, right? And so I think that's what it means, is like either know what your needs for support are, or be willing to learn and have that conversation with the coach, right? Not everyone has that self-awareness, and that's okay when they first start off, but that is a conversation that does need to happen over time about what's working for you, what is not working for you. The coach should be asking for that feedback. If they're not, offer it for sure. But it is a conversation that needs to continuously happen over time, because our needs for support can change at times too, right?
Right.
There are times where I need someone to be like really on me about all of the things. And there are times where I'm just so overwhelmed, I have to be like, no, please don't. So I think just having that conversation in the beginning and then ongoing over time is really important.
Yeah, and with those examples you gave, it's not just with you as a coach, like they've got most likely have other people in their lives as well. So you kind of teach them techniques
Right.
on how to ask for what they want from different people or what they need.
Exactly.
Awesome. That's a cool technique. And you mentioned a good bit back about the client or the person you're working with has to really put in the work, right? It's their goals that they're trying to achieve as well. Do you have any kind of tips on how either Noomers or clients can help to maximize their coach or their coaching experience to like help them towards like those outcomes?
Oh, that's a really good question.
Besides messaging you all day, every day.
So I think some people can rely too much on accountability from the coach, and it's really important to build the structure of accountability outside of the coaching relationship as well, right? So if you have a thing that you and your coach decide that you're going to work on, having a way to and going to work on that thing in between your sessions, right?
Mhm.
And sometimes that's part of coaching. It's helping to create that sense of accountability structure, but longer term, that needs to be a focus. And that
Right.
is, how can you be accountable outside of coaching to yourself and create those systems? Sorry, he's
No, you're all right. I mean, that's a good way of being accountable. If you got a dog as well, they'd love you and you have to walk them and stuff.
right. So I think it's being willing to do the integration work in between, right? And being willing to kind of create that sense of accountability for yourself as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's one thing. And I think too, again, it's kind of what we were just speaking to, and that is having that back and forth conversation with your coach about what is working and what is not working, right? I think a lot of people, I've heard a lot of stories about people going into therapy, for instance, and saying, oh, I stopped therapy because what they were doing wasn't working for me. And I asked them, did you tell them that? Did you tell them that the approach wasn't working? And they said no. And I'm wondering why,
Yeah.
right? Because if you don't tell someone what's working and what's not working, they're just going to keep doing the same thing because the assumption is that it's working. And so I think it's really important for the client to be forthcoming about the actual relationship itself.
Yeah, I think and that brings you back to kind of like the introspective thinking again and thinking through like what your needs are, and yeah, rather than just going through the motions with it.
Yeah,
Awesome.
absolutely.
I do want to kind of as we wind down, if you do have to go and like attend
No,
to your
you're
dog
good.
as well, let me know.
You're good.
But I would love, we've about 4 minutes left, so Leslie, you might have to kind of click that button to come back in, but I'd love for us to kind of leave everyone here with a few kind of key takeaways from today's discussion around like Coaching Alliance, and particularly like what coaching is not. What's coming to mind for you?
The first thing that came to mind as I was sort of reflecting on everything was this idea of being willing to experience your life and the world in different ways than you already do. Coach and as the client is just an entirely different way of being that we're not used to, and you have to be willing to step outside of your comfort zone in that respect. Two, that coaching ultimately is a relationship between two people where the coach, their goal is to create a strong, supportive space of growth. And so go into it with that in mind. They're there to adapt to your needs while, of course, operating within their scope of practice, and to really be a space of non-judgmental support to help with that sense of experiencing the world in new ways. And so that's kind of how my hope is that people will go into a coaching relationship with that in mind. Third one. What are some takeaways coming to mind for you?
So first, just to recap on what we've had so far, right? We had about kind of stepping outside the comfort zone. So that's probably like, yeah, being comfortable in the discomfort almost, and kind of
Yes.
knowing what's ahead of you and that
Yep.
that it's going to happen. So almost normalizing that. I like
Yep.
that one. The second, obviously, about it being a relationship for the coach, understanding that they're going to have like unconditional positive regard for you. They are that doesn't mean they're going to say, "Oh, you're wonderful, yay." They're not going to cheerlead you. They are going to ask you tough questions to help
Right.
elicit information, but it's all in the pursuit of you growing and developing into the person or achieving the goals that you want to achieve as well. Like that is part of the relationship. That's kind of what came to my mind when we talk about unconditional positive regard. It doesn't
Yeah.
mean cheerleady or nicey. Like it means tough, could mean tough questions, but it's a really supportive hand and just a guide for you throughout kind of like what you're trying to navigate in terms of like your health and your wellness. I don't know. I'm thinking that kind of ties in with the relationship piece, but it could be its
Yeah,
own
I think
separate
so.
point.
I think there's definitely, it adds some nuance to the relationship piece. And then I think a third one is just knowing that the role of coach is different than anything that you've probably experienced, right? I am not going to tell you what you should do. I don't like the word should. I don't use it in my coaching. I'm not going to tell you what to do. I'm going to help you figure out what works best for you because you know your life best.
Yeah, absolutely. And as you said, that it's up to the person working with the coach ultimately to put in most of the work.
Yeah.
Which that's where the gratifying piece comes, right? It can, as we said, it could be delayed gratification as well. But in order to like achieve those outcomes, it really is focusing on the process and being present throughout those points that'll get you to where you want to go, versus like a prescriptive quick fix, which we've seen historically. Hey, give me a meal plan or give me this diet, that diet. Might work for some, like perhaps you can drive through and be successful there. Kudos to you. But I think for the majority of people, it's not sustainable.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Leslie, we are clocking down. If you do want to just jump in and just finish out your thoughts, I definitely obviously want to thank you for a wonderful conversation as well. And yeah, if there's anything else you want to add before you jump out, feel free to do so now.
No, I think that's it. I feel like that went by so fast. You're right. It just went by incredibly fast.
Told you. Before we jumped on, Leslie was a small bit concerned about how long is it? And I said it'll be about an hour. And the thought of filling that time seemed daunting, but yeah, I told you you're just having a conversation is what it feels like. It goes so quick, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. I really appreciate the opportunity to just talk about this because again, it's a conversation that I have almost with every person I work with because they've never experienced coaching, right? And so I want this to be out there more so that people know what to expect.
Yeah, absolutely. And as I said, I know we've increased massively in listener count as well. I'd like to welcome everyone to this conversation. We are wrapping up, but you can click onto my name. You can click onto talks, and Leslie's will be the first one there as well. I highly encourage you to go back and listen as well. But Leslie, as I mentioned at the start of the conversation, like my viewpoint to you is that you are like a thought leader in the space of coaching at Noom, and I just love the questions you bring to like meetings of all sizes. Incredibly thought provoking, and I think is needed kind of in the pursuit of like the development of coaching as well. Because as you said, it's still a relatively new practice, but one that is incredibly important. I think people are starting to realize that more and more.
Yeah. Thank you, Podge.
All right. Leslie, thank you so much again. I hope you enjoy the rest of your day and we'll chat again soon.
Thanks, Podge.
Take care. Bye now.